Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay, are we doing live streaming? Are we doing live streaming? Yeah, yeah. But tell Brother Aziza. Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما واجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. وبعد. This is one of these presentations of mine where I would like to get a bit philosophical and engage the audience, inshallah ta'ala. Tonight, what I wanted to touch upon was fairness, being fair and balanced in the life of the believer. Of course, we can sit and I can talk to you about the ayat and the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ teaches us, moderation, to be fair, to be objective, the importance of these things. We can discuss them and we can talk about different applications and all of that. But what I really wanted to do is, and this is, I believe, this is indeed my first session in 2019. I wanted this to be a little more engaging and for us to, I want to test myself and test you, see if we can have a more engaging discussion as opposed to a lecture or a presentation where I come and I just present something to you and you just take it and then at the end you ask me a few questions and I get away with answering them the way I want, right? But I wanted to actually, for us to get a little deep into these concepts, because when we talk about character or matters or issues that are related to character, one of the objectives is that we're seeking positive change, right? We're seeking to improve ourselves and maybe also impact or influence others to change. And yes, it's on? Okay, yeah. Okay, it's so yeah, maybe we should have made, okay, yeah. Sorry, we were just talking about some technical things. Okay, going back to the subject. So we want to, if we want real change, then we have to really not only accept something, but we have to buy into it, right? So there has to be a buy-in. It has to make sense, resonate with you. You have to really, believe it to be true, relate to it, reconcile with it. Most of these concepts, anyways, are things that we know, but we're struggling to come to terms with them. Right? Especially this particular subject, right? When it comes to fairness and justice, what is fair, what is just. So first of all, where does this come from? I'm a big fan of a book authored by a scholar from Sham, modern day Syria. May Allah have mercy on him. He left Syria a while back, and he ended up in the western region of the Arabian Peninsula, where he, rahmatullah alayhi, passed away, right? But he was a great mind, a great scholar, and he wrote this beautiful book about the fundamentals of character in Islam, right? He wrote, it's a 2-volume book. And And in the book, he talks about truth. Like he talks about, the principles or the foundations, the fundamentals of character. Like in Islam, where does, having to tell the truth, speaking the truth and not lying, where does that come from? Where does it come from? Right? So he identified about principles from which these qualities or characteristics or values stem. And the first one to him is something that he refers to as hubbul haqqi wa itharuhu. Right? He says to love and commit. Can we shut the door, Abdullah? To commit to the truth. To commit to the truth and give preference to the truth. So basically, and when you read his explanation of how in Islam or a believer is supposed to uphold the truth, believe in the truth, love the truth, give preference to the truth, truth has to be a priority, right? One of the, it makes you start analyzing yourself and people around you and how people behave. One of the greatest characters that we have in our history is Umar ibn Khattab. And as I was reading and I was analyzing, I realized that Umar radiallahu anhu, even before he became a Muslim, he was committed to the truth, to what he perceived to be the truth. Right? He was fully committed to it. Therefore, when he finally found Islam or realized that Islam is the truth, what happened to Umar? He wasn't like, okay, Islam is the truth. Let me think about it. Let me weigh my options. Let me see how I can transition into it. Let me see, what is at stake here. No, Umar, as a person, his character, the way, he was created, if you will. He was someone who his commitment to the truth was so strong to what he believed that he was going to do it at any cost, by any means necessary. Right? So as soon as he realized it's the truth, his prejudice and whatever was blinding him was removed. What happened to him? He instantaneously embraced Islam. He actually wanted to do it on the spot. But he was led to the Prophet ﷺ. When he went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, he came, and the Prophet said, isn't it about time for you, O son of Al-Khattab, to accept Islam? And he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. On the spot. The Prophet did not even, he didn't come to the Prophet and say, Messenger of Allah, or Muhammad, I am here trying to examine this. I really feel inspired and all of that, so can we talk about this? No. As soon as the Prophet got up, when he came, they said that the companions were worried because Umar was known for his animosity. He was very open. And this is something that also distinguished him. Before he became Muslim, he was very open. Right? He thought that Islam was a false religion, that Muhammad, basically, his message divided the community and caused rift between husband and wives, parents and children, and all of that. So he wanted to end this. On his way, he was told he was redirected. He was told to go and check out the situation with his own sister. So when he went there, he found out that his own sister accepted Islam. Not only his sister, but also his cousin, who was also his brother-in-law, his sister's husband, accepted Islam. And he confronted them, and they had a little that confrontation, and then, he found that piece from the Quran that they were reading from, so he took it, and for the first time, he gave himself the chance to examine Islam. Not based on his prejudice or based on what he heard and his preconceived, notion, or for the first time, he's now examining, he's reading directly what God revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. This is what Muhammad is bringing. What is it? And he was reading the first 8 ayahs of Surah Taha. Taha ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa illa tadhkiratan liman yakhsha. And by the time he finished that, he's like, it is the truth. That's all it took, half a page of the Quran. Like, it is the truth. Muhammad is indeed who he claims to be. So he's like, I can't disagree with this. So he's like, lead me to him. Where is he? So they took him to the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet said, isn't it about time for you, Ibn al-Khattab, to accept the truth? He said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. No conditions, nothing, no discussion. It's on the spot. So Umar had this great sense, an attachment, admiration. He valued, he respected, he pursued, he preferred the truth. The truth, when the compelling truth is presented to him, he will take it, even if it's against his own desires or whims or what he's used to. This was Umar. This was a characteristic of Umar. Now, why am I saying this? Because Umar was one of the people that in our history, that whenever we talk about justice, right, like ruling with justice and being fair and being a just ruler, one of the examples that we give after the Prophet ﷺ is who? One of the most profound examples is Umar, right? So where did that come from? Where did his sense of justice and his commitment to justice came from? My argument is it came from that. From him putting value to the truth. Truth is everything, right? And then Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Maydani, rahimahullah, right? He moves forward and then he starts talking about other, he talks about characteristics, speaking or telling the truth, being honest or being truthful in your expressions or in your statements, in your speech, right? In your conversations. Where does that come from? Why do we struggle from that? So he traces it back to that original principle, right? Is the truth something that you admire and something that you are committed to and that you pursue and you're willing to hold on to it and uphold it or not? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves. Then after that, he goes into justice. And from justice, from our sense of justice, stems everything else. Now, so what is the definition of justice? What is your definition of justice? What is our understanding or our understanding of justice? Okay, fair. To be fair, okay. Unbiased. These are various applications of justice, right? But what does justice mean to you when you hear the word justice? We hear people saying, it's a great buzzword nowadays, right? Social justice, justice warriors, social justice warriors, right? What is justice? Right? We go to protests and people say, what do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. Sometimes it takes a while for justice to be established, right? You can't just have it like that. But but what is it that people are seeking when they say, assuming that the law is just and fair, right? So you're saying a rule of law, but assuming that because sometimes you can seek the rule of law or you want to apply the law, but the law itself may not be fair. So is justice about establishing law, or is law about establishing restoring justice? Right? Because to some people, the application of the law or the Constitution is justice. Which was meant to achieve what? In my opinion, right? Laws and constitutions and penal codes and is meant to achieve or to restore justice, right? Bring back. So what is that justice that we're all seeking? Yes. rights, that is great. So this is what he says. He says, there are different definitions for justice. So he said, justice is Bismillah. It's for me? MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. Really appreciate it. You should, next time you should bring for everyone. You can't just everyone can get a drop, inshallah, or a sip. Inshallah. Okay. Oh, let's see. Is this justice or not? Here's what he says in his definition. He says, justice is to give everyone or every individual what their right or what belongs to them or what is equivalent to it. So, and the key word here is what? Their right or what belongs to them. Right? So if someone is asking for something that doesn't belong to them or that is not of their right, is it just to give it to them? Okay. Right? So this is one definition that he gives. Another definition that he gives is, justice is to balance, like the action itself and what the right necessitates. They must be consistent, or they must be aligned. What does he mean by that? I'm just trying to roughly translate what he's saying. So he's saying is that if you have a right, the actions my actions towards you or whatever you do, whatever I do for you or whatever you do, right, with respect to that right of yours, have to be consistent or have to be for the sake of restoring or fulfilling or maintaining that right of yours. That's justice. Now sometimes it may not achieve that. It may not happen. However, not the attempt, but the actual application, the actual process took place. So though you may not end up having what you were looking for, like physically you may not be able, but my actions and your actions were all consistent with they were meant to restore or deliver that right to you. Now, if that right doesn't happen for some reason, right? It perishes. You perish before it's, does this mean that justice was not established? Yes or no? No. It wasn't established? No, it was established. Okay, so let's say I acknowledge, like, this phone is mine, right? I forgot it here. You found it. And then you realize it was mine. And you were supposed to deliver it to me. And you went out of your way to deliver it to me. What you're doing is the pursuit of restoring something. But in the process, something happened to you or something happened to it that was out of your control. Right? And I ended up losing the phone, or the phone was destroyed and I didn't get it. Is this what have you done your part in trying to? Okay, right? So fairness or justice does not mean that I have to actually realize the pursued end result. Right? Sometimes it doesn't happen. That's not in our hand. You get my point? So I have to be content that you tried your best. I can't say Abdullah didn't, Abdullah, if he didn't take it, if he left it where it was, right? He would have not, I would have still been able to, because Abdullah was trying to what? Deliver it to me. You get my point or no? Are you in agreement? You can disagree with me, right? So did he wrong me in any way? He didn't. He didn't. Now sometimes we say to ourselves, but had he not bothered himself with it and left it there, maybe I would have been able to go and get it myself. Right? I can't hold him responsible. Right? Because his intention was to restore the right, though it didn't actually happen. And he did his best to do it, and so that's fair. Then it's just, I have no claim against him. At least morally. I don't know, legally maybe I have. Where is our Mu'adh? Right? Maybe legally I have. Right? So this is justice. Now then he goes into another and then he goes into another very important concept that I want you all to listen to this. All of this, by the way, is going to help us at the end understand how justice works in Islam. And it will help us reconcile with some of the issues that we may be struggling with when it comes to rights and duties and obligations, men's rights, women's rights, parents' rights, children's rights. Sometimes we're... Then he said, we also have to keep in mind that justice is not about maintaining like two sides of a scale. It is sometimes, if there are two sides. Sometimes the scale may have multiple sides, not only two sides. You could have four, right? There are four different, and you have to balance them. Sometimes balancing doesn't mean that they all have to be even at the same level, right? Sometimes it means, right? So, an example that I like to give is sometimes you want to make the perfect, my favorite, banana bread, right? Or banana loaf bread, or whatever, right? You want to make. Now, in order for you to have a perfect banana bread, do you basically bring all the ingredients and you make sure that you put the same amount of everything? Okay, it's not the same amount of everything. It's the right amount of everything, right? That's what is going to give you the end result. The right amount of everything. Certain things you may put, like there's a ratio that you have to maintain. So the ratio could be 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 4, right? Can someone come and say, oh, this is not right, this is not just. It should be 1 to 1, 2 to 2. Right? No. Right? Just keep, you see what I'm going with this? Do you see what I'm going with this? Yes. You see what I'm going with this? So because sometimes people have the idea that justice or fairness or balance means equality. Not equity, not fairness, not balance, no, equality. Like it has to be even, it has to be the same exact. No, not necessarily. No. Different components might require more of something or less of it. Different components may have more access, less access, and so on and so forth. Then the most important question is, okay, so where do these rights come from? How do you determine the right amount of flour versus the right number of bananas versus the right, how do you determine, where does that come from? Expertise, experiment, right? So you think someone was trying to make the very first banana bread in the world, in the universe, in history. Like someone was trying to make it, and the first time it didn't come out right. They had to make multiple attempts until they finally found the right, perfect balance or ingredients and balance, and then they wrote the recipe. Yes or no? Or yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think it came through divine message. Now, when it comes to cooking, yeah, of course you have to experiment. But when it comes to individuals, human beings, and societies, how to govern a society or family, where do you think these rights came from? Who determined those rights? Right? Now, divine guidance tells us that the one to whom belongs all rights, the giver of rights, is who? Okay, now before we say that, why? The question is why? Why does it have to be Allah or the Creator? So there's a very important principle that we find in the Quran that we may sometimes recite and we don't reflect. Allah in the Quran says, it's Allah. أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. To God belongs the creation, so does the commandment or the command. Right? To Him belongs the creation, to Him belongs what? The command or the order. Another translation for the word amr is what? Order. Like order also means what? Proper order of things, the way things are, right? So to God belongs, and for very logical, obvious reasons. If He created, then He knows He's the one that made it. And did God create things perfectly? I'm not saying are things perfect, but did He create things in balance and perfectly? Yes. Right? When God created the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ. He established everything. It was well calculated to the smallest of details. Some of you will be better explaining or understanding this than myself. Right? And do we have any physicists here? Any physicists, any engineers, any chemists, right? Any biologists, they don't like to identify themselves. You know what I'm talking about, right? وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created things with a perfect balance for them to function and to fulfill their mission. And it's the same case. We're no different than the rest of the cosmos. We're not any different as human beings. Huh? Yeah, we're the same as well. When Allah created us and made us, and right? And He also says, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Does He, meaning Allah, does He not know what He created? What He produced? What He made? He does. So who is the, I don't want to say who's best. Who is the only authority, the only one that can determine who has what right? Allah. Right? And when Allah does that, He does it it's not random. It's not to please one segment or one group or, It is actually there's a wisdom behind it. Now, not sometimes, but we can obviously try to seek to understand the wisdom of God, knowing that we won't be able to fully comprehend or capture the wisdom of God because it's beyond us. There's nothing wrong with trying to pursue and be inspired by understanding the wisdom of God, right? Though it shouldn't be a condition to accept, His infinite wisdom subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with seeking to know, and there's nothing wrong with with investigating. I just want you to, I'm not saying you should just accept it. All I'm saying is, well, you should accept it, but what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong, there's no contradiction between you accepting it, and as a matter of fact, if you accept it, and because you know it's there, you pursue it, right? If you don't believe that it's there, why would you pursue something that is not there, right? So there is nothing wrong with doing that, but it shouldn't be a condition for you to submit, right? Just like there are a lot of laws that we don't understand, we don't know, we still accept and submit to, right? Right? I mean, it's khalas. I mean, everyone is getting their W-2 forms, right? Or your 1099 or whatever you're on. You're getting them. You're going to be filing for taxes, right? Who understands or knows, 10% of the tax code in this country? I'll be lying if I say I understand even 10% of it, right? You just hand it to someone who's going to do it. You're going to sign at the end. You accept. That's it. Khalas. Right? Because that's right? And sometimes it doesn't make sense, but you just have to do it. You accept it. Now, some of us may try, and you have absolute right to pursue, to understand where it came from. Why is it this way? Why is it that way? Should you be supporting AOC or not? Or her, should you be supporting that or not? Then you need to educate yourself. You need to be more. You need to know who's AOC? Is that you're asking? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now you know who the congresswoman from New York, from the Bronx, mashallah, right? So, right? But because I know some people, they're like, yeah, they're cheering. They're like, yeah, we want that, and they don't understand what it means. Do you even know what she's asking for? What reform she's trying to introduce, or she's calling for? But they're like, I don't care, but she sounds, okay. So anyways, so there's nothing wrong with trying to understand. As a matter of fact, it's something positive that you should seek. However, the question that you have to ask yourself, do you believe that the one that has the right, not the right, the authority to give rights and take rights is the Creator? Right? That's a question you need to answer for yourself. Right? So now then justice becomes what? Clear. Justice and balance in Islam means that we restore or we balance things to the best of our ability, by the way, because sometimes we won't be able, to the best of our ability, to meet divine standards. Not earthly standards, not our standards, but divine standards. Right. This is the key concept or question. Before we even start talking about what are the rights and the obligations and start doing a PowerPoint presentation, I wanted to make this point very clear, and I wanted us to kind of come to terms with it. Right. So I'll give you an example. By the way, there are a lot of examples, so please don't ask me, why are you using this example? You're not being fair, you're not being balanced. You need to give the counter. I'm just using a random example. So I hope that one of the concepts that, let's say, that I deal with, that in the old days, maybe 20 years ago, I didn't deal with it as much as I dealing with it now. Maybe before that, nobody, like 20 years ago or before that, nobody even questioned this. Everybody accepted this. Now, in Islam, when a couple get married, right? When a man marries a woman in Islam, and that's the only setup that we have. When a man marries a woman, the Sharia says that the man is obligated to do what? What is what are the obligations? One of the obligations is basically the financial, right? So I guess you guys took us to the financial. We're just going to focus on the financial. Okay. So the man has financial obligations. It all falls on who? The man. By virtue of being what? A male. Yeah, that's it. You can't call this, this is discriminatory, this is sexist. Why? The man in the Sharia, divine law says that it's in the Quran, it's backed by the prophetic tradition. The Quran says that the man has to offer his wife, right, and give her and deliver and fulfill there's an obligation, something called mahar. It's a marriage. It's not dowry. It's a marriage gift, something that has monetary value. It could be $1, it could be a dime, it could be millions of dollars, right? Whatever the person can afford, whatever is agreed upon, right? But once that amount is promised, it becomes her haqq. Does he have a right to it? Let's say a man basically gives his wife 50,000, let's say, which I don't think is reasonable, but if you can afford it, and if she's worth it, why not? All right? Let's say he gives her 50,000, he puts it in her bank account, or they open up, does he have a right to it? What if he loses all of his money and he's desperate? The Sharia says absolutely not. Unless, right? She willingly, she comes and says, you know what, here. That's what divine message says that. Now, what if it's reversed, the other way around? He has $50,000 in his bank account, and she's broke, she has nothing, and she needs some money. Does he have to give her from that money? He does. Can she take it without his permission? If he says no, she can. Yes, she can. Because she has access to it. She can. The Prophet ﷺ, when Hind bint Utbah asked him, she said, sorry men, some of you might come and say, oh my God, you have no idea. Maybe you should just go and report your credit cards lost. So when Hind bint Utbah came to him and she said to him, Abu Sufyan is cheap and he's not giving me enough for the household. So the Prophet ﷺ said to her, he gave her permission, can I take from him without telling him, without getting his permission? Or do I have to convince him? He said, خُذِي مَا يَكْفِيكِ وَوَلَدَكِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. He said, take as much as you and your children need, but be reasonable. بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Don't. So he gave her permission to take as much as she needs. To take enough. What is reasonable, what is equitable. Not take all of his money or half of his money and go on vacation and start, spending and go and do some, cosmetics, surgeries and stuff like that. No. Obviously, he said, take it for whatever is necessary, whatever you really need. Your basic needs, if you need whatever for that, take that. So the Prophet ﷺ gave her permission. Now, if someone was to put this in front of a judge or in front of any person, does it look fair? Does it? Doesn't. But is it fair? Yes. Is it just? Yes. Because why? Because the giver of rights said, right, the wife has a right to this. The husband doesn't have a right without permission. Is this clear? I know some of you are going to like me, some of you are going to hate me. I did not plan this. Right? I wasn't planning this. I'm just going to say, that doesn't mean that the woman, like a sister who's mashallah very wealthy and she has and her husband needs something, or that women shouldn't help their husbands. No, of course they should. And she gets blessed for doing that. And that's part of, someone might say, is she morally obligated? Well, she's emotionally obligated, romantically obligated. If she really loves and cares about her husband, of course she will do these things. These are, nice gestures. If we are obligated or if we are told to do this with total strangers, how about someone whom we have committed ourselves to? Of course she should do it. But the question here is she obligated? Can she be forced? No. She can. Right? So, and this is what the giver of rights says. So we can't come to this and say, wait a minute, this is not balanced. This is actually balanced. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His wisdom, His ultimate wisdom. So this is just an example that I wanted to give. Inshallah, we will continue this discussion in my next session. It will be more detailed. We're going to be talking about different areas, different applications. We're going to be talking about the applied version of this. It's a very important subject. But if you have any question regarding the principle itself, If you have any philosophical, when we say philosophical, we're talking about like, if you have anything that is troubling you rationally about it, or theologically speaking, or philosophically speaking, please feel free, inshallah. Yes. Feel very free, inshallah. Yes.
Living here where if a woman earns more than a guy at the time of divorce, the guy can get alimony. Would it be wrong for a Muslim guy to accept alimony?
Accept or demand? Ask for.
I mean, the judge gives him, he hires an attorney, she hires an attorney, he gets awarded alimony.
Now, that's a very good question. Now, okay, suppose that the justice system here grants you something that the Sharia doesn't. The Sharia does not make it your haqq. Now, the law of the land says that it's your right. You have a right to it. It's yours. You can take it. You can claim it. Now, divine law says it's not your right. You have no right to it, and you shouldn't take it, even if it's given to you. Which one takes precedence? It all depends on the individual's sense of religiosity. How committed are they? Do they really believe that there is a day where they will have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? Right? So there is a notion, this is very unfortunate, there is a notion that if the law gives you, if you get a ruling, if the court basically rules, to your advantage or gives you something, then it becomes halal. No, not necessarily. It's not true. As a matter of fact, and listen to this carefully. I may have said this in the past. If I'm repeating this, please bear with me. If the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, and the Messenger of Allah is the Prophet of Allah, he said, if I give someone something that doesn't belong to them, right? Then I'm only cutting a piece of fire and handing it to them. They can take it or leave it. And there is a context to that statement that the Prophet made. He said, I am a human being. I judge based on the presented evidence. I don't know the hidden. I don't know the unseen. I don't know all the circumstances. And some of you may be more capable of presenting or making a case for themselves. Some people are capable of making a case for themselves. Right? They will be very convincing. And I will rule based on that. However, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that there is a margin, like there is a chance for error. If I end up giving someone something that doesn't belong to them, in other words, meaning that God the Almighty did not give it to them as their right, just because they were able to prove it, to make a case for themselves, then they're not allowed to take it. You're not allowed to take it. This is the Messenger of God. So, min bab awla, anything or anyone else, then, So we have to look at it. So that's an obvious conflict between what divine message the Sharia says and what the judge says. Now there is, however, there is a different angle to this. Now, if the couple got married based on that understanding, like when they got married and they said, listen, we're going to get married in according to California family, what is it called? California family law? Or code or whatever, right? So we're getting married in accordance to that. In case of any dispute or separation, we're going to settle it according to that system. And if that's the agreement and that's the understanding, then it becomes binding. Right? If that is the agreement and the understanding as well. Right? Because sometimes people make certain agreements and they don't don't clearly understand what they're agreeing to, right? Now, there are certain agreements that, I mean, the Sharia is kind of flexible, but there are certain agreements that cannot be accepted. Like Sharia-wise, they're not, what is a legal term for that? When a condition or a clause is not binding, but it's not legal, or no, there's a word for it. Anyways, if it's not a valid condition, like the court will just throw it, will not accept it, because to begin with it's not. Anyways, so there are some kind of agreements that may not be binding, even if people agree to it, because the Sharia doesn't accommodate it to begin with. But generally speaking, al-Muslimuna ala shurutihim. The hadith says that you have to fulfill the terms of any agreement that you have, unless again the terms go clearly against what like if the terms make something halal haram or something haram halal. Let's say one of the terms is that when you die, let's say husband and wife agree that if any one of them dies, the surviving spouse takes everything, where basically the other heirs, the parents of the deceased spouse, or his children or her children from a previous marriage, get nothing. That is not a clause or a condition that would be accepted in Sharia. You can't do that. Right? Even if they agree on it, and if they approve it, and if they sign, right? Even if they knew what they were, that is not something that would stand in an Islamic under Islamic rule. Yes. Or even from a Muslim. Who wrongs you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, there is differences of opinions when it comes to using the court system to even like going to seek judgment from the courts. There's differences of opinion. I'm of the opinion that says you can use. Of course, it's always better to settle your disputes or your differences out of the court. I mean, even the justice system here prefers that you don't come, right? But let's say you couldn't do that. You could not reach an agreement. You could not reconcile. And now to seek justice, in order for you to have access to your right, you have to go and stand before a judge. That judge could be Muslim, it could be Hindu, it could be Christian, it could be an atheist judge, but the judge is going to rule according to the law of the land. And that is the only way you can achieve, or you can get your right or some of it. Then are you allowed to pursue that? Of course, definitely. I'm of the opinion that you can, yes. Now, again, you're seeking your right or maybe some of it. However, if the judgment or if the process ends up giving you more than what is owed to you, more than your right, that's when Islam comes and says, you only take what belongs to you and you leave the rest. Right? So if you know for sure, let's say someone took something that belongs to you, and you were able to get a ruling, and you were able to get something of a similar value, but it ends up being more than what was taken from you, then you owe that person the rest of it, the excess amount. Okay. Yes. Yes. We forgive apologies. Yes. 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 And I'm a big advocate of that. Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, but also that's also to seek what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for you. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you mean they're not remorseful, they're not sorry, they're not okay. That's a very interesting question. Yeah, yeah, it's, yeah, and I truly believe that people somehow are going that 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 people are going to somehow pay for them, whether they realize it or not. You know, whether they realize it or not. So you forgive them, you will be rewarded, you will be blessed, you will be given contentment, inshallah ta'ala. You will be given better than what you have lost. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate you. But then, what happens to them shouldn't be a concern of yours. But if we are wondering, yeah, it could very well be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will. And there are some terrifying stories that I can share with you, but I don't want to. May Allah forgive us. But they could very well, Allah could forgive them. It's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah could forgive them or punish them. Allah could punish them for their defiance, for their arrogance, for their... Actually, if they're lucky enough, they will be humbled in this life. They will experience something and they will be able... And if they're very, very fortunate, they will be able to connect the dots. They will be able to connect what happened to them to their offense. And say, oh my God, this is for what I have done to so-and-so 10 years ago or 20 years ago. If they're fortunate enough. That's, by the way, that's someone who's very fortunate. Yeah. It's good. Yeah, I mean, you absolutely you have the right to hold on to your grudges. You can hold on to your grudges and enjoy them for, yeah. Well, yeah, but what I'm saying, you have the right. But if there's a difference between what you're entitled to and what you really want to do, right? If someone says, no, wait a minute, I am entitled to being a big person and have a big heart and a pure heart. I'm entitled to have, a comfortable life. I'm entitled to going to bed with a pure heart and have to worry. So I'm entitled to all of that. Why should I hold on to this harmful, piece of memory or something? Right? I'm just gonna get rid of it and I'm gonna let go, right? I'm not going to pursue anything in this life. So it is, of course, right? I mean, I guess maybe the question that you're asking, is it even sane? Does it even make sense? Of course, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense for me to let go of something that will just harm me. And it's not going to do anything to the person that actually put me through that, right? It makes perfect sense. It's spiritually speaking, intellectually speaking. You can do either or. I mean, you can it's okay. There are different levels of forgiveness. By the way, this whole idea of saying forgive and forget, you're not obligated to forget. As a matter of fact, sometimes you don't want to forget. But there's a difference between, like, you need to learn from past experience. But there's a difference between me forgetting something, right? Like actively trying to forget, and actively trying to remind myself of it. We are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us in such a way where we do get over things and we forget and we heal. There's nothing wrong with having a scar. But don't look at the scar and remind yourself of what happened. Don't relive that moment. The wound healed. Don't look at the scar anymore. Just pretend like it doesn't exist. Right? But when you see it, say, Alhamdulillah, I survived that. Alhamdulillah, I healed. Right? You don't have to relive the incident. Right? So nobody is saying that just get rid of maybe some people might tell you you need to get rid of the scar. Do you have to? No, you don't have to. It's really, but you don't need to. Right? So that's one level of letting, forgiveness. Sometimes some people manage to completely forgive, like not only let go, but forgive. In other words, they may see the person that have done that to them and feel indebted to that person. Like, they're not like, oh, this person is lucky that I let them off the hook. They don't, when they see that person, they're like, right? They have no ill feelings. They could experience that. That's fine. You don't have, these are different levels of it, right? But nobody is saying that whether you let go or you forgive. Let go means tarkul uquba, as they say, right? So and that is called afu, pardoning. Forgiveness means that you completely, you purge the offense. You see, right? You can do either or, whichever you're capable of. That's right. I mean, no. And for both you will be rewarded. Whether you let go, meaning you pardon the person while you still, the offense is still there, it's on record, right? Or you forgive, meaning you take it out of your record, right? So you can do either or, whichever, whatever you're capable of. I'm happy with you just letting go, right? Not sweating it, the little things. Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So, by the way, sometimes that is much more. When you tell someone, I have handed this file over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My issue with you is now in the hands of Allah. I'll let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deal with it. That is No, I'd rather deal with you. If I offended you, I'd rather deal with you, do whatever it takes to redeem myself, or than having to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. No, khalas. Once you say Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel, you hand it over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means khalas, you left it up to Allah azza wa jal, and that's it. You let go, and now you need to move on with your life. Yeah. Yes, Abdullah. Yes. Inshallah, last question. Go ahead. Yes. I know, yeah, it is. And that's why, subhanAllah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about infanticide, right? Killing infants, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on the day of judgment, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. When the infant or when the child killed as in their infancy is asked, usually who's questioned, who's interrogated or questioned? Who do you question? The perpetrator, right? The offender, the person that the criminal, the person that committed, whoever is on trial. On the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the victim is going to be brought, right? And will be cross-examined or will be questioned, asked, for what crime were you killed? They have not committed any crime, right? And that will happen in front of the person that did that, right? So that's why it's a very, very, very critical, decision. If the life of a fetus is established, right? And there's of course a debate between 80 to 120 days, but there's consensus after 120 days. There's consensus amongst the scholars that after 120 days, abortion is not allowed, except under, severe circumstances and all of that, right? Except unless if and only if the pregnancy will, for sure, is a threat to the life of the mother. Right? Because after 120 days, you have a living being now. You have a human being. Not fully developed, but it's a human being. It's a life. You can't take it. Right? And if someone does that, if they say, well, it's my body, it's my right, it's not their right anymore. So yes, they will be questioned. It's a serious. Now, of course, the offense before and after birth is greater, meaning after birth is murder. It's capped. There has to be there is a punishment for it, right? Before birth, it's a jinayah. It's an offense. It's still a but. Again, it's not to lessen the gravity of it, right? Because they have now haya mustaqilla. Now they have an independent life. They're independent. They're breathing on their own and all that, right? If a child is born and they start breathing on their own, then anything done against them is if it's done while they're inside their mother, and a mother does it to them or someone else does it to them, they were not, it was not done to them directly. They're still connected to the mother. So it's like, by the way, someone might say, wait a minute, so you're saying that if a woman says, well, it's my body, I can do whatever I want with it. It's not true. In Islam, a man or a woman cannot do whatever they want to their body. Can you say, well, I don't like my pinky anymore, I'm going to chop it, I'm going to cut it out? You can't do it. In Islam, it's haram. You can't do that. Islam doesn't allow you to do that. No, not capital murder, like killing a person after they were born. That's capital. Before 120 days, again, it's debatable, right? But there is a room if there is a need for it. If there is a need for it. Yeah. But after 120 days, you can't do it for genetic reasons or whatever. The only case that the scholars give is if maintaining that pregnancy threatens the mother. In other words, if she keeps the child and if she tries to give birth, she's dying. She's going to die for sure. Then you sacrifice the asl to preserve you sacrifice the fara, you sacrifice the fetus to preserve the mother. Then because then you have two lives, right? You're going to lose one or the other. Yeah. Yes. Mm. They won't, but they still, part of their redemption is to, there is something that they owe the victim or the family of the victim. So they will have to, yeah. Yeah, they say, okay, scholars say that what if you offend someone, right? And you're sorry for offending them, and but they're nowhere, you can't find them. Maybe they passed away, they're not around, or you don't have access to them. You don't, right? Do you remember the person you bullied in 5th grade? Or you have Alhamdulillah, we don't have any bullies here. You have never bullied anyone, alhamdulillah. So now you want to redeem yourself. What do you do? Or let's say you have access to them, but if you tell them, if you go and you tell them, let's say you have a good relationship with your mother-in-law, with your husband, with your sister, with your cousin. You have a good relationship, but you have done something to her or to him behind their back, right? And they suffered from it. And they're like, and now you want them to forgive you for what you have done, but they don't know it's you. What do you do? If you go to them and they say, forgive me, and they're like, what for? And you tell them, this could completely destroy the relationship. Maybe it's something that they got over or something like that, right? If you reveal what you have done to them, then it could actually destroy the relationship, break the family, break the marriage, God knows. Right? So what do you do? Right? Huh? Okay. So in that case, to preserve this relationship, right, you ask Allah for forgiveness, and then you try to redeem yourself by doing something for them, praying for them, like going out of your way to do something for them, right, to compensate for what you have done. Does that make sense? So you try to redeem yourself in other ways. And that's why we are always encouraged to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And we're encouraged to pray for one another and to pray for those that we have offended. The Prophet himself said, if I have offended any one of you, please come and take your haqq. And the Prophet ﷺ said, oh Allah, if I have offended anyone, if I have done anything to anyone, if I have wronged anyone, oh Allah, forgive them and make whatever they have suffered because of me a source of rahmah and forgiveness for them. So the Prophet prayed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses them. Of course, the Prophet didn't harm anyone, but he himself was teaching us, and he was being extra careful, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or he was being very sensitive, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he asked and begged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that in case he harmed anyone without knowing, right, unintentionally, he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that a source of blessing and a source of comfort and a cause of what? A cause of mercy for them, like to make that so in other words, to something, to make it turn into something great for them, right? And this is from the khususiyat of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakumullah khair. Can we conclude, and then we can have our side discussions, inshallah, so that those who need to leave for any reason that they don't feel obligated. Okay, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.